This is Petito's Gang, and the matter of the moment is really one that stirs the soul. It is one for a lot of anxiety. It is one that any Nigerian who cares about their children and the future should really be paying a lot of attention to. When Aremo Segun Shoba presented his book, the review was done by veteran journalist Dr. Lauren Yomi, who in the review talks about an illiberal political class. In fact, he was writing off the Nigerian political class. How can you make progress with this kind of cast of characters who constitute Nigeria's political class? And as I turned to some professor of politics who was sitting by me, and I said, illiberal political class. And the person says, no, you're dignifying these guys by calling them a class. They're not a class. This is just, no, I shouldn't say what he said. But there's a concern, and seems to be a consensus, that Nigerians have contempt for their politicians. And yet, everybody's following behind what they're doing. How did we get to a political class that is perceived as a criminal gang? What can we do to resolve this? Because it's eating away at the legitimacy of our political system. I don't know. How did we get here?
Yes, Prof. At that book review, Dakpo was very poignant in talking about the days of Babatunde Joseph and 3 talks that came to him with a view to seeing how they were going to shape, direct, and affect the course of journalism and hence politics. One thing led to the other, it was battle of long knives. And then we saw situations where money became the influencer. And that came from the perspective of the fact that money speaks. I don't know if it is more of a cultural thing that has gone southwards in this part of our world. However, the whole thing has now blossomed into what we saw in the various republics. We had the Amala politics, we had the Baba Oloye politics in the middle.
You didn't have biggie politics because that's the one that's sweeter.
And then, of course, down south we had our ubiquitous Jagaban, that was holding sway. In the southeast, of course, we had our issues of Uba, the Okija and what have you. Up north, of course, the politics now dovetailed from the Talakawa of Aminu Kano down to non-professors, VP, professors of universities now pursuing the ethnic agenda. Before we could say Jack Robinson, our National Assembly, state assemblies now got populated by this moneyed class who not only dictated the pace, would tell you that they will go for election and win election, and of course, at the end of the day, come back for re-election. It got to a point where in the glare of the public, somebody got up in a hallowed chamber of the National Assembly and hollered and said, I cannot believe I'm seeing people that I had prosecuted when I'm back in the police. It was virtually shouted down, and then the whole thing just went dead. Using the word class, I agree with you, my learned prof. It's hands in gloves.
It was crazy. Me that said it too. Is this professor?
It's crazy, and it has taken traction to the extent that our cartoons and our students in primary schools now are saying, what profession do you want to belong? I want to be a politician. You want to be a politician, i.e. that one that will want to get wealth without work, without labor. I think the thing has reached a feverish proportion, and the thing has now, like an octopus, has dipped its hands in many pies, education, in the medical, in our social fabric, and development has continued to go southwards.
1999, when when democracy actually returned to democracy. Don't forget that we have been in the military era that have actually shown us that the only way to govern is by military fiat. And by so doing, the person that come in that succeeded the military happens to be an ex-military person. And from there, it blossomed to a point that those who have voice they're supposed to have use their intellect to set the agenda on how democracy is supposed to take root. We are afraid. That gives credence to those who sees themselves. You can call them the Aburos, you can call them the criminal gangs. So they came into the prominent. And from there, our democracy never witnessed anything that looks like democracy.
Maybe we can try and put some structure in terms of the sources of the challenge we have in the political system. First, we had the challenge of the illiberal model in which, literally speaking, as you were saying, we had a return of the military of state capture in the name of a civilian government. That's what happened in 1999, literally. We know how, there are many people who still argue that Chipalaye won that election, but the military wanted their candidate and they got their way, okay? So that's one issue. Now, having come into a more militarized civilian environment, what kinds of things in terms of, one, the critical political issues of that day reinforced a certain view that politics is about hustling, about money, about, stealth, rather than development and progress, which seems to public conversation. Public conversation seems to have suffered very much. The public intellectuals seem to be in retreat. So holding power accountable became even more challenged because public conversation and civil society seem to have been in major retreat around 1999. The civil society that fought the military seemed to have relaxed and said, okay, we're now in civilian era. So that was another problem.
You are very 100% correct. You see, we also, as we are trying to diagnose this symptom, we also need to know that the military is still in our political space. Because anytime we want to have an election, guess what? They will invite the military to suppress people. And the person that is bringing in the military is usually the person who is already in authority. So what my argument is that our democracy have never, ever taken off as a normal democracy should. Because all these strong men that you mentioned and all these state captures, they are still the people we are looking up to. To compound that, hunger have become part of
An instrument of politics.
Politics.
Keep the people hungry so you can do anything with them.
What I think about it is the fact that I think, like we have rightly said, coming from military has affected our psyche as a nation. However, beyond that, I think our political class has been monetized rather than being based on ideologies. And the reason is not far-fetched. If we look back to history, we also look at the fact that, there was a time in this country, in the 1998, we had election in this country where the Bola Gays were campaigning there, and you could not use money to dissuade people from who they were determined to vote for.
In fact, somebody argued in a conversation I had very recently, some politicians, that the 1992-1993 election season is probably the best in Nigerian history.
It is.
Ideas dominated, thinking people were engaged
in the conversation.
And the deft hand of my teacher, Humphrey Mosu, at the Electoral Commission, even put a cap on it with the June 12 elections and how it all played out.
That's it. So these are the things that have affected our election. But if you now bring it back to the recent years, the election we have in recent years, there are elections that are more like, because they are not based on ideologies, they are based on what people seek to get, the financial reward. I mean, now we keep hearing conversations like, for you to be a governor, you need X billion amount of money. So these are the issues that have dominated the discussion. And so because of that, it has also become like a strategy to ensure that you keep people at a certain level so that the moment you throw peanuts at them, it becomes
so there's a vested interest of the political, this class business again. The guy said we shouldn't call them class, they don't qualify to be called a class. The political, whatever. They have a vested interest in the poverty of the Nigerian people.
Absolutely.
Because they can perpetuate the same
to keep
Nigerians poor.
To keep them poor.
So that they can.
Universal adult suffrage, one man, one vote becomes an impossibility, and then introduced into the lexicon, politics of do or die. I agree with Ike on his point about military, but sometimes I also feel that the right hand and the left hand debate. If the left hand is not washing well, the right hand comes in and helps you to wash it and clean it. I think the whole elite class sold out on the Nigerian dream, and we are all here suffering for it.
Okay, time is almost up for this round, but there were specific actions that we could go back to. For me, one of the clearest I can remember was the removal of Senate presidents, beginning with removal of Chuba Kadibo. Clearly, bags of money moved from government to legislature and all of that, beginning a terrible corrupting of the political class. When we come back, let's talk through some of these specific issues.
When the government is seen that way, it will be reduced. We don't want people that are just striving to get there.
Illiberal political class means a political class that is totally antagonistic to liberal democracy. I believe in popular democracy. But if you do not even allow liberal democracy, you endanger the interests of the society and even political stability. I have come to the conclusion that we have an irredeemable situation. There's no way you can reform this elite. I therefore support the call for a revolutionary change in our society. This political class cannot midwife democracy in our country.
I mean, I don't know what you mean by a political class, but what we see is that generally we have a responsibility in this country, one, to respect the rule of law, whether you are a professional politician or you are, not a professional politician. You can legitimately express concern about not just the rule of law, but also about processes, about the need to institutionalize our political parties. Our political parties in Nigeria and in major part in other parts of Africa, they are just like vehicles for getting to position. They are not vehicles of service. Many of these political parties are ideologically deficient. You don't even know what they stand for. We need a far more open, far more liberal, far more responsible political class, either at the level of the political party or in terms of the general environment for politics and politicking in Nigeria and elsewhere.
Education is the premise of progress in every society. Over the years, we've seen our educational system weaken from what it was to what we see now.
We are faced with a situation where our institutions release graduates with little or no employability skills.
I'll advocate that employability and vocational training centers should be established in institutions. This will expose students to the realities of the corporate world and the business world.
A possible solution would be for Nigerian education to be tailored to the evolving needs of the world.
This year, the UN International Youth Day is focused on transforming education. The Center for Values in Leadership, CVL, would like to invite you for our International Youth Day Conference, scheduled for Thursday, August 15th, 2019 at 10 a.m. We look forward to seeing you there.
And we are back. This is Potatoes Gang, and we are talking illiberal, political, whatever. I think we'll get to the heart of this. I don't know if I should say what that professor said about the so-called class that we are misusing. He said they're just a cult of, should I say the last word? Anyway, if the political class is perceived so disdainfully by most Nigerians of any education, as I seem to perceive increasingly, how come they are able to function? Because at the heart of any governing in the modern world is the concept of legitimacy. If you are so perceived by a majority of thinking people, the government has a low legitimacy threshold. So perhaps we can speak to why government still functions with respect. You go to places. I actually like to avoid public events because the political class acts like a band of thugs. You know, just come in everywhere, governor. Nothing happens until some politician or crass group of politicians have shown up. And the whole country still accepts it. In many societies, people will walk out anywhere where governors converge and people like that and create an illiberal culture.
Yes, Prof, you see, what we are dealing with here is a little bit beyond most Nigerians.
Captured people.
We are already in trouble. And until those who feel that they have solution begin to come into the political space, we are doomed for. But having said that, it wasn't too long ago, you went in for, to become a governor, and you saw how that happened. I mean, we are talking about daylight robbery, and nobody seems to be saying anything. But I have a solution, because we all know what the problem is, and the problems they are staring at us. My solution to this is that until such a time when an average Nigerian will look at their leader and feels that this person is our servant and not our not our big man, then we will begin to do the right thing.
Yeah, but as a friend of mine,
Fela had it in his popular song. My fear, talking about fear, my people fear too much. We don't want to die, we don't want quench. Mama dey for house, Papa dey for house, and all that stuff. And I think we are operating a politics of some zero sum, in the sense that you do not win elections, you think that is the end of life. I am also aware, like Ike is trying to put across here, that there were quite some puritanist Nigerians who went for elections. I won't mention you, but who went for elections, they didn't win elections, and they were not diminished in any way. Professor Familoni of the Economics Department, University of Lagos at that time, he was like a comical figure when he went on the podium, and then somebody pulled his jacket and said, "Prof, this your 2 inches is not what we are looking for here." And then the prof now went, "What?" Oh, now, Ganifa Wanyimi, you remember, he came with a basia. Basia, when I say basia, it's a Yoruba word, that look, my people are going to follow me. He never got a singular vote. My point is simple.
You're going back to Tunji Braithwaite even.
We need a situation where, like I said, elections are not necessarily do or die. You remain in people's hearts forever. And when Obafemi Awolowo in 1981, 1982, thereabout, predicted that the ship of state was heading towards the rock, people shouted him down and called him prophet of doom. Looking back and in retrospect, will you look at Obafemi Awolowo in our body politics today and not continue to consider me an avatar of some sort? I think it is high time Nigeria go back, and let me borrow your terminology of the professionals at that time, never again should we find ourselves in a situation where the Ghana must continue to circulate
we're far,
and whatever. Never again.
We're far gone. We're far gone. Yes. Look, Nigerian democracy is a farce. Everybody knows the elections are not credible. But somehow we live with them. How do you do this kind of thing without a revolution?
What I think has been happening is the fact, I think the political, I'll call them class for lack of better word. The political class, I set of people that are actually very intelligent. They know what they're doing. And I think because of that, this money we're talking about flows into churches, civil societies, to even businesses. So you do not and the media. So they have been able to plant a little of themselves in all these different arms. So it's like they become Nigeria, sort of. So a few people will still be outside and say, no, this is not the Nigeria we want. But the reality is that that is the Nigeria that is staring us in the face. And we are all part of it. Everybody will have a stake in the current country that we run, and then we cannot totally...
And those who just can't take it, just up and move to Canada.
You see, there's a nexus between the political, the illiberal class of the people who actually govern with the hunger that is already in the land. But putting that aside, we have mentioned that. One of the things that actually amuses me is these people, they know themselves, like he rightly said. They are very, very smart. They know what they wanted and they are going after it. We need to begin to interrogate the source, the process in which they even emerge. And that process is, if you don't have some sort of, I'm not talking of academic credentials, if you don't have good credentials in terms of character, in terms of who you are, you should not even come up today.
That process that you are talking about is convoluted.
But they have credentials. The worse your credentials are, the more acceptable you are. Disrupt the social order and you get rewarded.
Except there are credentials and there are credentials. I think at the end of the day, it has to be character. I wanted to please say something. This Nigerian thing is poverty. It used to be there. It's no more here. We have our peers in the subcontinent of Africa. Ghana came from worst example, and Ghana is on the rise. Ethiopia was in a terrible condition. Ethiopia is... Rwanda, for crying out loud, came from tears, blood, anguish, and today they are ranking in development index.
It's really very important. It might actually be that we need these criminal gangs that run Nigeria so that Nigeria will die and rise again. Because it's that bad. Maybe if we look around us and the Ghanas of this world, the Rwandas and all those people are becoming the relevant people in Africa, and one day we will say, what are we doing to ourselves? Unfortunately, time is out and we must go. The real problem is that we don't have elections. So how do you pretend to be a democracy without elections? At the bottom of this failure is the political party system. What we call political parties are people's personal companies. SPVs that...
Of strong men.
Yeah, of strong men and selling of this and buying of that. And until Nigeria crashes these political parties and creates a new system, we're all dressed up with nowhere to go. But we must go from this show. And you can follow us, you can continue the conversation on our social media handles, which are running on the screen as we say goodbye from today, and we look to see you next week.